So what we're going to do today, first we're going to look at VSim. We're going to go into a model that I created a few years ago, and we're going to first just learn how to navigate in the virtual world. For those of you who are gamers, you're going to be like, please. For those of you who have used Google Earth, also, we're good. For those of you who don't do a lot of interaction with 3D content, maybe it'll be a little more difficult. But I'm thinking, give me 10 minutes and you'll be navigating in the world. So we're going to do navigation. Then we are going to do narratives and talk about the narrative process. And I've got some pre-built narratives. I'm going to ask you to bounce around and look at those and see how that works. And then I'm going to ask you to make one of your own. And then we'll have a little bit of a bio break. And then we have cookies. Thank you. And then we're going to look at the embedded resources. And we're going to open up another model that I have created. This one not so long ago. We're going to play the Street of Cairo. Just the Street of Cairo. It's kind of isolated from the model itself. So we're going to look at just the Street of Cairo. And I've got a couple of files for you that I've made that have embedded resources. So first I'm going to ask that you just kind of use it and see what you think. And then I'm going to ask that we talk about that. And then I'm going to ask that you guys actually add some embedded resources to Cairo so you can kind of see what that process is like. Then the final thing that we're going to do is show you how you can either use your own content, export it in a DAA file, load it into VSim to do a narrative, or to make embedded resources, or to export a binary file, which kind of bundles the whole thing into something. James, you are so ahead of the crowd. Okay. James is like already.
She did it first.
Oh, you guys are already done. Okay. I can go home now. So we're going to go either, I'm going to let you either open your own models, or remember we talked about Google crowdsourcing the creation of the entire world? Ha, ha, ha. In Google, well, now Trimble 3D Warehouse, there are SketchUp models available to all of incredible array of historic sites. So I'm going to ask y'all to just troll through Trimble 3D Warehouse, pick a file that, with some parameters, includes textures. Textures work best in VSim, and has a downloadable Collada zip file. And I'm just going to talk you through. So everyone find what looks like a little temple icon on your computer and open it. So little temple icon, double click on that puppy. It will say, really, are you sure? This might have a virus. It doesn't, I promise. And you're going to open it. It opens at a predetermined size. My recommendation is you just leave it where it is. Don't get fancy. So very simple. This is just an interface for 3D content, much like Word is an interface for text documents. Okay? The top zone is where the narratives live, when there are narratives. This bar is empty. There are no narratives. Fine. We'll get there in a moment. Down here is where the embedded resources live. Also empty. We'll get there in a moment. So that's it. What you can do is say File, File, Open Model. So we have to load something. And you're going to have to browse for what we put for you in the Dropbox folder, VSim test files. And Pantheon v082.vsim. And then say Open. Ta-da! 3D content. If across the top you see that there is one file that says the Pantheon, it also says locked, which means you all can't change that. But let me do some things. You also see that the embedded resources file bar is gone. Click on this little button down at the bottom. That opens it. It's still empty. Click on this guy and make it go away. Click on this little guy and the narrative hides. Click on that little guy and bring it back. Click once on the Pantheon. Just click on it once and click the over arrow that indicates play. So this is play and pause. And it will take you through a lovely tour of the Pantheon. And just go with it. You can close the narrative bar if you don't want to see that narrative bar, or you can leave it open. Your choice. So I'm going to wait till everybody gets inside, and then we're going to pull in some navigation. Okay, so once everybody stops at the center, more or less with the drain. Oh, I think we look at the oculus, and that's when we stop. You have to. Okay, so are we looking at the oculus? Everyone at the oculus? All right, so in terms of navigation, there's obviously the narratives, which is a form of navigation, but if you're going to interact with your mouse, you need to know the others. The first one, which is accessed off your keyboard, if you hit the 1 key, and you see it tells you, hit the 1 key again, first person navigation. What that means is you're in a WASD gamer mode. So the second mode, we'll come back to each one of these and play with them a little bit. I just want to tell you what they are. Russian, hit the 2 on the keyboard. It says VSim navigation, which is like flight simulation. I love the flight simulation mode best. You all can decide. I don't care what you use. Hit the 3, and it says object navigation. Hit the 3 again. Object navigation. That's kind of like Google Earth. Okay, so hit the 1 again. Let's do some WASD stuff. Hit the space bar on their keyboard and hit the WAS or D. Okay, so more information about WASD. You can be either tethered to the ground. So if you hit the G key, hit the G key, and you'll see up in the corner it says ground mode. That means you're tethered to the ground. No matter what you do, you are going to be tethered to the ground. And you can look around. Your mouse controls where you look. So look up, and you're tethered to the ground. If you hit F, you go into fly mode, which means you can fly up to the Oculus in WASD mode. So everybody point up to the Oculus and hit W. Woohoo!
It's too tempting. I looked up at the Oculus.
You had to do it. Okay. G is ground, F is fly.
Is it 1 speed? There's no like...
Oh, there is an R. Hit the R, and that makes you go into fast speed. Fast speed, WSD, fast speed. Okay, we're, I think, ready to move on to the next mode of navigation. So everyone make your way to the arch that's in the middle of the plaza outside. So leave the Pantheon and go to that arch outside. And then turn around and look at the Pantheon because it's such a lovely building. If you are in the navigation modes, the spacebar toggles between freezing the scene and navigation. So if you want to interact with the embedded resources, or if you want to interact with the narratives, spacebar to freeze. It will say space. If you spacebar now, it'll say freeze in the upper corner. If you hit spacebar again, it'll say navigate. So if you want to interact with, like if you want to close the narrative bar, freeze the scene, close that bar, and come back. Okay, so everyone is staring at the Pantheon more or less? Yes. Everybody freeze your scene. So everybody hit F. Freeze your scene. Hit Shift W. Woo! Wireframe. Awesome. Hit Shift W again. Freeze your scenes. Hit Shift W. It shows you a point cloud. Shift W again, and it hits you back to texture. So it just cycles through those 3 modes. Shift W. This is in the tutorial guide, so you can write it down or not. All right, navigation mode 2, flight simulation. This is actually my preferred mode of interaction with the model. What it does is uses only the mouse. So you can kind of have one free hand for gesturing. And to me, that's important. So I love flight simulation mode. In flight simulation mode, the left and right mouse buttons control your thrust. Think of this as a flight simulation mode, right? So left is forward thrust, right mouse is reverse thrust, and the center mouse button, if you click it, stops you. The speed, the acceleration is exponential. So if you're cramming on that left mouse button, you are going to go to God knows where. So open up the narrative bar. So you can always open up that narrative and kind of reposition yourself with the narrative. So in flight simulation mode, you can be tethered to the ground, or you can be in free flight. Here's the key. Your cursor, relative to the center, controls your spin. So keep your cursor centered. Now, just standing there, put your cursor to the right and the left. Just stop. Everybody stop. Look to the right, look to the left. Okay? Yeah, good. Okay, so if you look to the extreme right or left, you will start spinning wildly. Don't do that. Or if you want to, do that. But only do it if you want to. Okay? So we've got, to review, forward thrust, left mouse, reverse thrust, right mouse. Stop is the center button, and that lets you kind of stop and look around, right? If you're in a panic, hit the spacebar. But don't get comfortable with that because that's bad form. Everybody get rid of, freeze the scene, spacebar, get rid of the narrative player at the top. And I'm going to teach you a tricky maneuver. I'm going to want you to go into 2, flight simulation mode. I'm going to want you to, don't do it yet, we're going to back out into an aerial view. Shh, this is cool. Okay, I'm going to want you to look at the ground. So you're going to unfreeze the scene, you're going to look at the ground, and you're going to reverse thrust. Look at the ground, reverse thrust. You might see just a lot of paving. Okay, let's do the final mode of interaction, which is kind of a Google Earthy thing. So if you hit 3, you will see it says Object Rotation. Okay, everybody hit 3, and use your left mouse button like you would in Google Earth and spin the thing around. Okay. So you're putting down your left mouse button, holding it down, and moving your cursor around to spin. You can zoom in and out using the, you don't have scroll wheels. Oh, do you have scroll wheels? You can zoom in and out. You can look underneath. Okay, do you all feel comfortable in the navigation modes? All right, let's talk about the narratives for a minute. So everybody freeze wherever you are. Open up your narrative bar if you don't have it open. Hit 1 or 2, and then freeze. Okay, so everyone has the narrative bar open. Everyone, just for sake of argument, hit 1 to go into WASD mode. Okay, so I want you to get back to the narrative player, which is where the box has a title. So if you see a lot of thumbnails, click the arrow to the left, to the far left. So to the left of where it says locked. So there are 3 components to the narrative section. There's the player, and that's where you see titles. You'll see a title here. There's the editor, so everyone hit open. And that's where you'll see the thumbnails. And this file, you'll notice, says locked, because I didn't want you guys to change it. So we can't show you the editor with this file. Everybody hit the left key and go back to, the one by locked. Go back to the player. And I'm going to ask you to import some more narratives. So let's pretend. I'm teaching a class. I've asked my students to all build assignments about the Pantheon. And what they hand me is a narrative file. So you have a model of the Pantheon. They have a model of the Pantheon. They make a narrative, and they send it to you. And so you can load it. So say File, Import Narrative. And you should come up with a list of a bunch of narratives. And you need to load the 4 Pantheon ones one at a time. Sorry, we don't do groups. So click 1, open it. You'll see a title's been added. Click 2, open it. So let's pretend that there are 4 scholars who are the critical subject experts on the Pantheon. Each of them builds a narrative and gives them to you for use in your class. They can share that with you as they'd like. They can lock it or not as they'd like. That's an important thing for scholars, I think, is the ability to say, this is mine. If you click on that first one, the Pantheon, that says it's locked, hit Info. So click on that and then hit Info, and it just says the Pantheon, basic interior tour created by me, and then you hit OK. That's a way to this is my intellectual property, as simple as it was. So anyone who's building a narrative can write that information in. And we'll build a narrative in a minute, but I want you to see how these work. So we've talked about narrative player, this one, where the titles are. Pick any one of the last 4 and open it. So pick any one of those and hit open. And you will see thumbnails. Click on those thumbnails and look around. Oh, one of them is blank. Oops, sorry. Okay, go back. If the thumbnails are blank, pick another one. It just means I created it in an older version that wasn't capturing thumbnails yet. So click on those, the nodes. Okay, so everybody has a bunch of them. Everybody's looked at thumbnails, right? So we've got the narrative player, got the narrative editor, and the last is the node editor. So in the process of building a narrative, which we'll do in a second, but I just want to show you what the node editor is. So why don't you go into Navigate and move a bit, just not too far, maybe look to the right or look up. So hit the space bar, look somewhere, and then freeze your scene again. So now we've made a new viewpoint. In the narrative, in the upper bit, if you just freeze your scene and then press plus, boom, it's going to make you a new node at whatever you were looking at. And it's going to show you, if there was overlay content, it will show you that, because that's what was on the screen at the point the node was generated. So at that node, click Edit. So click on the node you just made and click Edit. And what you're going to see is a little simple box that comes up with 4 styles. Heading 1 in red, heading 2 in white, body in white, label in white with, or black with a white background, and image. Those are the things you can add to the scene. So hit heading 1. Type something. And then hit OK. And then move that around. Okay, hit heading 2. Type something. Move that around. Hit heading 3. Type something. Or not heading 3, body. Oh, sorry. And if you mess up, select what you just did and then hit delete. And label. So you can see that we've established some styles for you. Okay, so let's delete something. Somebody click on one of the text blocks you've done. You'll see it outlines in white. Hit edit on that little style bar, and you'll see that that texty thing comes up again. You can change it. Or you can remove it. So do whatever you like. Okay, let's try, everybody got text down. You all understand that? Yes. Okay, let's try an image. So hit image. You're going to browse for something. We've made a folder called Pantheon Embeds. Double click into that. Down at the bottom are some line drawings. Grab one of those. Whatever you want, one of the line drawings. Got it? Say OK. Oh, there it comes. So now you can move it. So pull that image in. It resizes. Oh, this is too big. So it resizes from the lower right corner of the image. So make sure you can see the lower right corner of that image, and then left click and drag it to resize it. And put that wherever you want. Done. And then when you're done, say done. Done. Okay, so has everybody mastered the styles and an image? It's pretty much all we got. Okay, so now we're ready to build your own narratives, right? Yes. Okay. So everybody say done if you haven't already. Done. Everybody go back to the narrative player where you see the titles. Everybody navigate out looking at the Pantheon. So spacebar to unfreeze. All of your overlay stuff will vanish as you move. Okay, so everyone's staring at the narrative player. Okay, this is going to be hard, you guys. Ready? Everybody's frozen. Press the plus key, the plus thing in the upper left.
Oh,
Plus.
Sorry. That one.
Okay. Oh, that was hard. Peter, you need to go back to where the titles are. So it's this. And now press the plus to start your own narrative. Give it a title. I'm hearing bing, bing, bing. What is that? Too many letters. Oh, yeah. There's a restriction on the number of letters in the title because it has to fit into the box. So be judicious about your word choice. So this is where your intellectual property comes into play. So if you're going to make a narrative that you want to distribute to anyone, and you're going to want to lock it, and you want to be able to stake your claim on this particular narrative, that's why you would put this in. Sometimes I just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then press OK. And you see it gave you a new narrative. So it added a narrative to the narrative player. Okay, does everybody see their narrative added to the narrative player? Press open. Now you're in a brand new narrative. It's a brand new world. You're making your own. So to make a node, you press plus. Done. And when you have 5 nodes, stop. Everybody has 5 nodes. Okay, so click on each of those nodes in order. So freeze your scene and you can click through them. So if you're giving a presentation, you can just kind of use these as jump points. I mean, you don't have to actually do anything beyond this if you want. I just want to talk about the Pantheon, and I'm going to use these as jump points, and look, here's the Oculus. Yay, coffers, yay. Or you can actually make a narrative and let VSim do the movement. So everybody click to the first node. And here's what happens. You're on your first node. You see the node. Double click the node. It says pause time 4. That means 4 seconds. It also has a checkbox that says stay here until a P key, until a play has been initiated. This is so you can either say, I want to stop here for 20 seconds. And if you say, I want to stop here, but I have no clue how long I'm going to talk about this, you just say, stay here until I'm ready to move on. Okay? So everyone leave that for the moment and just say, okay. And you see the little tiny box between. Double click on that. That's the transition. That's how long it's going to take to go from one node to the next. You can make it be as fast as you want. You can make it be as slow as leisurely as you want. It defaults at both to 4 seconds. So everybody hit OK. So now let's just play these to see what happens. So everybody start at your first node, hit the play key, and cross your fingers. So first node, select, play. And it's going to do what it does. Some of you are going to crash through walls. Some of you, it's going to be smooth and beautiful. Others are going to go into the air. What do you think? And if you go up into the top of settings and you say content creator, oh, but it's blocked off. Ha ha ha, I tortured you all. In the content creator settings, which I was the content creator for and I controlled, there is a setting to do a narrative loop. So let us say you're putting together a museum installation for somebody and you build 5 different narratives about something, and you want it to play the first one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the fifth one, and start all over again so it's an unattended kiosk screen. Done. That's what the narrative loop is for. So everybody go to like the middle of your narrative. Pick a node in the middle. Because you have this open.
Oh, okay, great.
Okay, everybody pick a node in the middle. Navigate slightly to something else. And then freeze and add a new node. Just navigate slightly, don't get wild on me. And if you say plus, add a new node, boom. So now it will reconfigure your path. Okay, so everybody add text, add images, play as you'd like. So let's stop for a moment and save our files. We've just had a crash and the narrative went away. So everyone when you see the thumbnails, navigate back to the very first one. This is just good form. So save whatever so say done if you're in a node editor. Navigate back to your very first node and say File, Export Narrative. And find that Dropbox folder and say Pantheon plus your name. I mean, don't type plus your name, type your name. But I knew there was going to be a smartass who would do that. You know that.
And she looks at me. No.
Ah. Okay, no. When it says, do you want to lock the file, yes or no? Say no, unless you know you do not ever want to make changes to that again. So say no unless you're positive you love it and it will never change. That said, if you have said yes, you can always export it again and say no. So you have a locked file and a not locked file. Always smart. And what VSim does on the export is it packages everything into one file. So we've pulled random images, we've pulled text, it's saving the XYZ location, the heading, pitch, and roll, it's saving your transition information, and you just export that narrative, locked or unlocked, and it's going to package it all together in a file that could be shared. My kind of arc of making a narrative is to lay out the route first. So I have lots of nodes. Never would occur to me in a million years to just have one node and do stuff. So yeah, so you're using this in different ways, and I totally appreciate that and love that. I would love to hear about those reproducible bugs. So let me know. So everybody save what you're doing if you want to save what you're doing. And if you don't want to save what you're doing, close VSim. And we're going to go to a different place. We're done with the Pantheon. And you're going to say File, Open Model, and you're going to pick Cairo, VSim, November something, something, something. And what it's going to give you is this view of Cairo. So this you saw yesterday, but I'm extracting it and just showing it to you without the rest of the exposition. So the embedded resources, we're going to play with some of those right now. So Roshan's going to open a file, import embedded resource, and you guys pick. Do you want something that's kind of annotation heavy or something that's kind of photo heavy? Annotation, we're going annotation. So we're going annotation heavy, open it up. So what this is showing us, I set up a file that links to all sorts of other files about Cairo. Some of the stuff I earmarked as a global resource that would be of interest anywhere you were in the Columbian Exposition. You might be interested in seeing this stuff. Roshan, single click on this. How about plan of street, single click. Architectural info, plan of street, the plan of Cairo from Daniel Burnham's final report. This is where it's going. Double click. It launches. Okay? Close that. Street in Cairo guide, single click. PDF. All right, enough of that. Let us get into the street of Cairo, but by doing it, we could either like try to fly in, or we could open a narrative. So do file, import narrative, that Lisa has so generously, import narrative, Cairo V1, open, click. Open that, pick a spot inside Cairo. Yeah, that's good. Bing. Oh, look. Yay. Okay, so close this. We're going to not play on narratives anymore. So close that. And why don't you navigate into the world a little bit? This is where we get to laugh at your navigation skills. So you see how these are all changing. So stop somewhere. Freeze the scene. And what's this one? So single click. This one, the next one. Watercolor that shows the wedding processing. Okay, there's a typo, but double click that. And resize. And that's what went on there. So what you're seeing are the local resources in action. So Roshan, why don't you just navigate through Cairo a bit? And just aim down the street, and you'll see these all change. So all of these resources are set with essentially distances. So what I did was I flew to a space in Cairo, stopped. I said, I want to link to a photo from here. So stop there for a moment. I said, stop, I want to link to a photo from here. And I put in some metadata about that photo and said, I want it to be local with this biggest sphere of influence. So now anytime you navigate through there, it will become available to you. And it will change, and things will change. You can also say, forget that, and close this and just navigate around. Also fine. You notice that they are different colors. That's because I set up categories. So Roshan, stop for a second and do show all. I thought about how I had material for the exposition and how it might be organized. And VSim just lets you start any categories you want. As a content creator, if you're building a model about the place whose name I cannot pronounce, Samothrace. You're building a model about Samothrace. And you want to include a category of articles about the conservation of the Nikkei at the Louvre. You want to include a category about site photos. You want to include a category about architectural drawings. You want to include a category about notes for your reconstruction. You can make as many categories as you want. I've never really tested it beyond 7 or 8. But you could theoretically make as many categories as you want. And in the point of, we'll go through this in a moment, at the point of making your embedded resources, you define those categories. As the content creator, you have total control over what categories you are. You actually get to assign your color. So for those compulsive graphics sorts, you can pick the color of your dreams for every category. And I did that so that there's a visual cue and that you can kind of match the color palette, because I'm obsessive about these things. So let's double click into 1893 photos. So it shows you, click once, east entry, the east entry of the street. That's boring. Furniture shop. Okay, you see that it has the white corner. That means it's going to reposition the user to wherever that happens to be. Double click that. It's going to launch it and reposition us, and there we are. Okay. You could also sort images. You can close that or leave it up. By global, which just shows you those 4. By local, shows you a whole lot because they're there. By file type, sort of useful. By title, you can search for it. Go to show all and search. So click here, type camel. Say OK. Everything with camel. Let's, for the moment, look at the metadata. Everybody is interested in that. So click furniture shop just once. Click edit. So this is the metadata about the resource. When you're creating the resources, if you're making an embedded resource file for yourself, each resource you need to fill this information out. Sorry, there's no way to like mass upload 1,000 images of anything. There's just no. So you have to decide if you're entering a file, so that's going to be a link to a file on your computer somewhere. If you're entering an annotation, that's just like a comment in the virtual space. It's only a text comment. So I went through, and in the annotation-heavy version, I wrote a lot of author notes, and I'll show you that in a second. Or a URL, and there you're going to paste in a link to a website. So those are your 3 choices: a file, a note, a website. You give it a title, you type in a description, you tell the source of it, and you make a choice about its use or licensing. So if you will do this drop-down menu, it's copyrighted, fair use. But I did not put fair use the first, because I figured you'd all just like go fair use for everything. So you have to make a decision. So copyrighted, fair use, held by creator, public domain, unknown, used with permission, or web resource. You have to make a choice. Okay, so public domain. Category. These are all the ones that I've added. And if that's not good, I mean, that's for this particular file, you would be making your own. So all you have to do is say add new. What shall our new category be? NEH Summer Institute. You can select the color, pick something pretty, say OK, say OK. We come back to the drop-down menu, and we have to decide. So there it is, NEH. Yay, new category. We have to decide, is it a global resource or a local resource? Most everything I've said is local. So you pick local. You pick its sphere of influence. That's essentially the units under which it will activate. So You can adjust it as big as you want, but then you have all sorts of resources. And there are things that, you know, only matter in a very tiny space, especially when you're in a large-scale world. So you play with that as you like. There are two options down here. Do you auto reposition? And that's when that resource really only makes sense when I'm looking at you. So I would want to auto reposition the user on launch to look at our dear cameraman. You could also auto launch it. Now, a word of caution. Don't use the two of those together a lot, because what happens is you're navigating, repositioned, auto-launched, repositioned, and it's like a weird pinball effect, and you get sucked through all of the auto-launches until you're off at the end of the street. So be very careful about using them together. So auto-reposition will just reposition the user. Auto-launch will open up the resource as you get near it. Done. Okay, so that was the metadata on this. You can open the filter, and as you, a user, if there are a billion resources embedded in the world, if you want to say, I really am only interested in the 1893 photos, the watercolors, and that's it, then hit filter again. Now as you go through, the only thing that will be shown to you is the 1893 photos and the watercolors. And to clear that filter, you go X. Everything comes back. With the narratives, when you export a narrative, I told you it packages everything into one big file. That can get kind of big, because if you add in a lot of images, it can get kind of big. With the embedded resources, thinking that people were going to add in a lot of links, we do not package the resources together. We would be creating like multiple gigs of files. So if you're working on your own computer, you really don't need to worry about that, because you're saving a resource file, it's on your own computer, you know where it is. And if you're trying to distribute a file to someone else, you need to think about that. So if you export an embedded resource file, you again have the option lock or no. Say no, and it preserves all of the links, it includes all of that information, filter or not, it just puts everything in an embedded resource file. But again, it's only links, it's only the text. If you say, I want to lock your embedded resources for distribution, will only include the notes, the annotations, and the web resources links. So what I'd like you to do now is back to your computers, import that Cairo narrative, and you're only importing that narrative to easily get you into the world. So get inside with one of the nodes, then close the narrative bar, and you're going to disengage, or you can play it if you'd like, you know the drill. Then do File, Import Embedded Resources. And most of you, don't do anything yet, most of you will be taking the Cairo annotation-heavy Dropbox or the Cairo photo-heavy Dropbox. And so actually the annotation-heavy file includes a lot of silly notes by me. Like I went through the exposition, the Cairo, and said, I don't know what this is, and oh, isn't this strange, and I was looking for that and couldn't find a photo, and so this is what I did. So there's the annotation-heavy one has a lot of strange notes by me, and the photo-heavy one includes a lot more links to photos. So what I'd like you to do is take like 10, 15 minutes and navigate around. This doesn't actually include many narratives. Eric has found the only, many interiors. Eric has found one of them, and if you all go to the main space where the camel guy is, go to the camel guy, and the building next to the camel guy, turn around. So you're looking at, turn around, where the fortune teller sign is. Find the entry to the fortune teller sign here. Oh. So it's kind of down the street. And this was actually the first purpose-built mosque in the U.S. It was included a replica of, I think it was the funerary mosque of Kiat Bey. And you can go inside, and if you start bouncing around, it's because your collision detect is on, and hit C to turn off the collision detect. So C toggles collision detect on and off.
Oh, then you can go farther again.
Yeah, so if you're bouncing around. So it's kind of a dodgy interior based on photos of the, so there's the mihrab and the interior art. But again, no photos from the exposition, so it was just kind of dodgy. So play around, and when you're ready to leave Cairo, close VSim. So everybody close VSim. So the last amazing thing that VSim does is it lets you repurpose for educational use that entire crowdsourced well of low-res SketchUp models built for Google Earth. So if you are an architectural historian sort or an art historian sort, and you feel like you want to play with some 3D content and you don't want to build it yourself, you can go to Trimble 3D Warehouse. So everyone, find Trimble 3D Warehouse on your computers, open up a browser, type in your search. Okay, there are hundreds of models, thousands of models, millions of models. Find one that appeals to you. So type in a search, cathedral, I don't know, temple. Okay, here's what you're looking for. I'm going to tell you your most likelihood for success is going to be to find a model of a reasonable size. Larger is better in this case, because if it's really tiny, it's going to be really low res and you're going to be very unhappy. So larger is better. When you find something you're interested in, look at the 3D view. And it'll give you an opportunity to like rotate it around in the, see in the window. So Roshan is showing us a 3D view of a temple in Nepal. If in the 3D view there are textures, that's a good thing. Textured models work better in VSim. And then, once you find something you like, go to Download Model. And you need to grab the collada zip file. So you pick the building, look at it in a 3D view, see if it's reasonable, do Download Model. You need the collada zip file. And we've made a folder for you in the Dropbox that says something to the effect of 3D Warehouse test files. So make a folder for yourself, drop that zip file into it. So pick whatever you want. So anything that's big in the, like the 2 meg to the 4 meg category is as reasonable as you're going to get out of Trimble 3D Warehouse. If it's less than a meg, trust me on this, don't bother. It's going to be really unsatisfying to try to have a first-person navigation moment with it. Yeah, definitely make a folder because we're going to unzip them, which is going to unpack model files and texture files. So everybody should have a folder. Okay, does everybody have their DAE or their zip files? Yes? Okay. Unzip that sucker. So everybody browse into that folder, double-click it or however you need to unzip. And it should say unzip, and you say extract here or whatever you need for it to do. And then open VSim. Open model. Browse into your folder. You're looking under usually the models folder, and you're looking for the DAE file. Okay, if you very briefly saw something and then the screen went blue, it means that model you downloaded was likely built in centimeters or some insane. So what you need to do is change the unit. So only those people who had that problem do this. Go Settings, in VSim, Settings, Navigation Settings, and you'll see settings for field of view, which is like a camera lens. You see a setting for eye height, which is pedestrian level mode. You see a far clip plane set at 5,000. That's 5,000 units. So VSim only cares what happens between me and 5,000 units, but you're in centimeters, so your model's God knows where. So change that to like 50,000 units and see if it comes in play. Okay, so everybody has content?
I can't move like I thought.
Okay. If you had to change, if your model was wacky and built in centimeters and you had to change the far clip to see it, you also want to change your acceleration factor. So go into settings, navigation settings. Acceleration factor is set at 6. That works for feet and meters. Change it to like, 200 for centimeters. And then you should be able to fly around it. Okay, so here's the final task. So the point of this exercise was to see that it's pretty much possible to grab these models. I hope the vast majority of you were successful with this adventure, and we can work on it a little bit more if you're not. The final thing, if you are a content creator, and let's all just pretend that you made these models. If you want to package this as a VSim file to share with someone, so rather than having to unzip, unpack all the different textures, you wanted to package it together, you would just say File, Export Model. So try that, File, Export Model. Type in a file name in your folder for your 3D warehouse test. And it's going to ask you some questions after you type in your file. You're getting to some export options. There are 4 restrictions. As a content creator, I know the ambivalence I have about people saying, gosh, can I have all your raw files? No. And I know a lot of friends who feel exactly the same way. It's like, yes, we'd love to share to a certain point, but I just spent 12 years of my life building something, and you want me to hand it over to you to do what you will. I'm not 100% comfortable with that. And so we put in some content restrictions. So pretend that you slaved on this model. Your choices, you could do any of the above. The first is you can lock the content creator settings, which means if you had gone into the content creator window, you can look at it later, there's a box that you fill in, what's the model name? Who built it? When did they build it? Where was it built? How do you get to the URL of this project? It lets you set the window size. Like the Pantheon, I'm sure every one of you tried to make that go full screen, didn't you? And it didn't, did it? Because I locked it. I didn't want it to go full screen. So neeners. So that's what the lock content creator settings means. It's restricting use. So if you say lock content creator, it will lock all of the metadata about your model, and it will lock the window size. It could force the collision detect on. It could force the branding. Do y'all remember in the Pantheon there was a little UCLA logo? Branding. Mine. So there's, that narrative overlay, the node where you put text and images? There's a branding overlay that you can put your lab logo, your for educational use only, whatever you want, and it will always say there if you lock it. So it's like watermarking a little bit. I'm sure that hackers could come in a second, but I'm going to think that most of the people we're dealing with are not going to try to hack our files, so I'm going to go with that as a lock. So that's what lock content creator settings is. Restrict to current narratives and embedded resources. So let's say you've slaved over your model. You've slaved over some really sexy narratives. You've added in some annotations, and you want to release it for peer review. But you really don't want people to get all wild with your content. If you restrict to current narratives and embedded resources, you are essentially disabling free navigation. People can look at your narratives, they can open them, they can pop around the nodes, they can launch embedded resources, but they cannot free flight. The last one, which I honestly have not tested yet, it puts an expiration date on your model. I will share it with you, but it's only going to work for the course for this semester. and then it explodes. I mean, you might do that just to be, you know, mine, 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 mine. I'm not sharing it. But you might also, right. But you might also do it, let's say you're actively working on a project and you're releasing content and you frankly don't want bad, crappy versions still around 4 years from now when you've updated it and it looks so much better. So you put an expiration date on it and somebody has to come back and get a new version. And so you can check them all, you can check one or not, two, or you can check none of them. Either way, what VSim will do is package the model, all of the textures, any narratives that you have loaded at the time as locked narratives, and any embedded resources that you have loaded at the time as a locked embedded resources file, and it will package it into one file. It's effectively making a read-only copy of everything. So you all can decide, but that's how you export a model in VSim. So VSim, the Pantheon model, VSim in both the PC and Mac version, a few narratives in the user guide are all loaded right now and available on the Institute for Digital Research and Education's website. So you can download them now and play with them now. The IDRI website, if you go to projects and partners from here, and VSim. And so Windows release, Mac release, the Pantheon with its restrictions, and then overlay a narrative and the latest user guides, which you guys have printed copies of. Good? Thank you all very much.
Thank you.